Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Once we admit the need for help, the help arrives. The ego always wants to claim self-sufficiency. It would rather pose as a creative loner than ask for help. Ask anyway. That's a quote from Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Hi, welcome back to the Content with Character podcast. If you hadn't guessed by now, today's episode is about asking for help, otherwise known as Firstborn Problems. The day this comes out is August 20th, if you're listening in real time, which means back to school is around the corner, back to business. Okay, raise your hand if this summer was not as focused on your business as the rest of the year. Mine is raised high. And maybe for a lot of us, back to having a lot on our plate and a lot to manage, because oftentimes, I don't know if you relate to this, but we are the ones wearing lots of hats, many, many, many hats. So even if you don't have kids in school, even if you didn't experience a wonky summer, you probably at least can relate to wearing all the hats, having a lot to do, maybe even sometimes not knowing exactly what to do or who to turn to lend an ear, eyeball, hand, you name it. So today we're getting into a firstborn problem. I say it's a firstborn problem because I'm a firstborn. It's obviously not just a firstborn problem, and that is asking for help. Now, according to the memes I see people share and then I reshare because I think they're funny, it's sometimes harder than it needs to be to ask for help. And I think that there are a variety of different reasons. When it comes to getting help in your business, sometimes you need it. So today we're going to just unpack a little bit about why you need help sometimes in your business and then how to actually ask for the help that you need. And I guess I should say like where you need to ask sometimes for help in your business. So let's start with a personal story. I'll actually, you know what, pause the personal story. I'll get into that in a minute. But before I do, I want to quickly, and I do mean quickly, introduce myself, just in case this is your first time listening. I'm Emily Aborn. I'm the host of this podcast, as well as a content copywriter. I've been a business owner for actually over 10 years now. And in that time, I've gotten to help hundreds of industries and thousands of individuals within those industries with their copy and marketing. I'm a responsible, got my act together, I can do anything you put in front of me by myself kind of firstborn. I grew up with 3 little brothers, so suffice it to say that asking for help has not always come naturally to me. Outsourcing things, not always easy for me. And reaching out with a need is harder than I feel like it maybe should be. So that said, I can also tell you that I wouldn't be where I am today without helpers. Helpers I hired, helpers I didn't know that I needed, helpers who helped without telling me they were helping, but they were helping big time. And of course, helpers giving help that I didn't want, because actually, weirdly enough, not to repeat the word help again, but when people tell you things and give you things that you don't want, that's actually helpful too. So my most recent asking for help, in addition to how I'm always asking you as a listener to help me by sharing episodes, joining in on the conversation, writing reviews, connecting with me, yada, yada. But my most recent experience in asking for help was around my newsletter. And some of you already know this story, but the dilemma was basically I started a Substack newsletter just for fun. And it's a series of personal experiments within the experimental container of Substack. It's like a very meta thing. So I was just curious about Substack and I wanted to try it. If you have ever tried it, you know what I mean when I say that it's different than any other platform that we're on. So if you also want to read my experiments or you're curious about it, I'll include a link in the show notes. You can see what I'm up to over there. But I have to warn you, it is just for fun. It has nothing to do with business or marketing. It's actually more health and lifestyle and fun stuff. So but I do a new experiment every week. So I was just kind of experimenting with the platform of Substack. Well, long story short, I really like it. I fell in love with Substack. I mean, I really, really like it. I like that it can be a little bit social and community minded. I like that it rewards and champions writers and creativity. I like that you can use it as an email resource, a podcast resource, a hub of ways for people to connect all in one. And I also especially like, that it's cost-free. So now the goal, ideally, for most Substackers is to get people to upgrade to pay for your writing. That was not my goal at all, nor is it going, well, right now it's not my goal at all. It was for me just a goal to get people into the conversation a little bit more in a community format. So I'll tell you what's not free, what's not cost free. My email newsletter service. And I use that for my weekly emails. I send out emails about the show and upcoming events for entrepreneurs to get involved in. And as I often do, I was kind of reviewing my subscriptions. I was like, I think this is a little too expensive for this. So it's not that I mind paying for an email service. It's just this one is a little expensive. And the price keeps going up. And it also is not it's just not my favorite thing. So I don't like subscriptions. I don't really like subscriptions, membership costs. It just kind of bothers me. And especially when it's something that I don't use. And in this case, I don't even really use half the features that it offers. And my list is becoming more intentional, which actually means smaller, and I'm okay with that. So I kind of had to figure out all right, what's a lady over here to do? And how do I know nothing bad is going to happen if I do switch to Substack? Now, usually I would just dive into this and deal with the repercussions later. I've done this many times. But because I've put so much work into the back end of my email service provider, and I put a lot of work into just building it all in the first place, I didn't want to regret my decision and then come crawling back to where I started. It's a newer platform, and I don't know a ton of people who have specific experience in this. So I didn't want to just put it out there to the general public, because I didn't want people who had no idea what I was talking about or the steps involved. I didn't want to hear from people who are not business owners, because it's not really entirely relevant in this instance if you're not. I didn't want to just post it in random Facebook groups and communities who I imagined would just have lots of opinions and advice. And also, between you and me, I don't like spilling the beans on things until I've already done them. I don't like telling people things until they've already taken place. And then I didn't want to ask my just general following or general lists in for a bunch of different reasons. But anyway, I did need help. And I didn't want to need help. I wanted to figure it out myself. I didn't want to ask for help. So I'm first of all, I don't like this. It feels uncomfortable. And second of all, who on earth do I get to help? So I started with this. I turned to my Substack followers, readers. I posed it as kind of an experiment to them. And I was like, look, this is not a cop-out for the week. This is an experiment in asking for help. I have to get through this feeling and ask for help. Now, what I got in response to my ask was awesome. I got a really thoughtful and intentional series of questioning. So I was able to kind of look at it from both a strategic business lens and also a heart and feeling standpoint. One woman created an entire educational segment for it on a group that we're in together. And Jenny Belanger, a website designer who I collaborate with often and host of the Website Design Made Simple podcast, she wrote a whole entire blog showing who makes a good candidate for Substack and who might not. So because she did such a great and thorough job, I'll include that link in the show notes for sure. And then a couple other people reached out to me on Instagram and conversations around that. Everybody was business owners. Everybody was doing things a little bit differently. And because of that, all three were extremely, extremely helpful. Now, I haven't made my decision yet, but making decisions in general is actually one of the big areas that I both need the help and I also struggle to ask for help. This can even sometimes be down to the very smallest thing, what do you want to eat for dinner? I'm it's a decision I have to make. I don't know. So the whole experience brought me to a couple of reasons that I think that entrepreneurs in general struggle to ask for help and what we can do to get a little bit better at asking and making sure that we're getting help from the right places, the right people when we do need it. Now, you might have more reasons that get in your way to add to this list, but here's what I came up for 5 that I see often when people are struggling to ask for help. Number 1, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call it firstborn syndrome, but really it's just this very responsible, independent, capable, self-reliant, I got this kind of person. We are highly capable. And even if you're highly capable, you sometimes still need help. It's not putting other people out. It's not annoying. It's not needy. And it's not whatever else you think it is in there. Even if you are highly capable and responsible and you got your act together, you sometimes still need help. The second one is just kind of like this pervasive entrepreneurial mindset where like you are the only one who can manage all the things all by yourself and you must wear all the hats. Sometimes I think it comes from a fear of appearing weak or incompetent. And I can tell you right now that asking for help is not weak or incompetent. We're going to get into that in a little bit here. But thirdly, and this one we talked about a little bit last week in our episode on perfectionism. The third one is perfectionism. This is that desire to have everything be done perfectly, which means you're going to be reluctant to delegate or to even ask for help in the first place. Because, of course, as the perfectionist, we can do everything better, faster, more thoroughly, more perfectly. Right? Okay. And my fourth thing is trust issues. This could be related to perfectionism for sure, but I think it's like difficulty in trusting others to handle, I'm going to say, precious tasks with the same level of care or the same level of passion or the same level of commitment. It's hard to outsource that to somebody else. And I get it. It's hard to trust somebody to handle something in the same way you would, to care about it in the same way you would. I also think that trust for me comes down to being misunderstood or not trusting that somebody has my best interest at heart. Okay. First, let's talk about the misunderstandings first. Sometimes I think in these Facebook groups or public forums or when we're asking things on platforms, people may misunderstand exactly what we're looking for. And that can feel really, really frustrating. And over time, you can kind of like lose your trust in the fact that people would have a solution for you in the first place. In general, I think it's also kind of like you have your defenses up sometimes because you don't want to take advice or opinions from people that maybe are not where you want to be or that you don't respect or just things in general that you would not do as solutions. So I think there's a little bit of a trust issue going on in this desire not to ask for help. And then some of it is financial, of course, like worrying about the cost of hiring help or, when I do outsource this to somebody else, is it going to cost me? What's it going to cost me? So those are the 5 that I thought of that like get in the way of us even asking for help in the first place. Now, let's talk about some of the areas we might actually need help. And I actually, some of these, I'm like, I kind of just want to bring some of these to your attention. Like, you don't need to be doing this by yourself in some instances. And there are some instances where I did them by myself for far too long. So I'm not going to get into all. I'm sure you can think of a ton more, but here are just some I thought were like relevant for today's podcast, today's conversation. Number 1, kind of a no-brainer, administrative tasks. This is like email management, scheduling, bookkeeping, like all of those. Like I think of like maybe like a virtual assistant would be a great person to ask for help in some of these areas. If you need one, I have a good recommendation. The second area is marketing and promotion. You did not start your business, quite frankly, most of us did not start our businesses to become marketers. Now, I did because that's what I do. But most of us did not start our businesses to become marketers. And sometimes we need an extra set of hands, an extra set of eyes, an extra set of ears to help us with things like social media management, which could be like actually creating and scheduling the posts, engaging with followers, looking at the performance metrics and making decisions based on what they're seeing. Some of it might be content creation, which is like just getting the stuff ready for you so that you can post it yourself. Some of it is website copywriting. A lot of people need help. Like, trust me, I've seen a lot of websites and a lot of people who maybe thought that they could do it themselves actually needed help with website copywriting. And I'm just going to say this for all of these things. We just don't know what we don't know. And it's somebody else's, like, it's so easy to somebody else. They could do it in their sleep. And sometimes we're spending so much time struggling, like slamming our head against the computer. And we're just like, I can't figure it out. And for somebody else, it's just a piece of cake. So lastly is like search engine optimization. That's not something you should go at alone. Okay. if you want to take the time to learn absolutely every single thing that you can about search engine optimization, I say go for it. But it's a lot. It's a job in and of itself, and so that can take asking for help. And then there's other things like technical support, which could be like the behind the scenes on your website or IT issues, creative projects, which are like the graphic design and the, like I mentioned, copywriting and video editing, like editing podcasts, things like that. And then there's obviously like strategic help. So that's like business coaching, financial planning, market research. That's like getting guidance from somebody else, ideally somebody who's gone before you, to know what next steps you need to take and to know really how to make a growth plan and how to set goals and achieve them. And then one area I see people take on a lot, like way more than they need to, is in event planning and coordination. 100% guilty, been there, done that. But when you are planning an event, it is a huge undertaking and there's lots of details: booking venues, managing registrations, creating the promotional material, the marketing material, engaging with attendees. Like there's a lot that goes into an event, and going it alone is not for the faint of heart and not really recommended, I would say. So that's another area that we might need to ask for help. I think it's fantastic to do events, and I would highly recommend if it's something that interests you. And I don't think that you need to do it alone. I've been there, I've done that, and it's so much better when I have help by my side. And then lastly, this is just something I definitely did not start my business to do: legal and compliance. Like, I don't know how to write a contract. I don't know how to make sure everything is compliant with relevant laws and regulations. So that's another area I just ask for help. And I'm sure you can think of a ton more, like insurance. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things in our businesses that we just don't have the expertise to do. And figuring out how to do it would take more time than them just taking their 5 minutes and doing it, right? Because it's, again, in their zone of genius, we might be struggling. So what can kind of happen when we don't ask for help? I mean, it can be anything from minor to absolutely astronomical. Sometimes it does seem like you're saving money by doing it yourself, by not asking for help. But in the long run, it can actually cost you a lot of money, a lot of time, and who knows what else. So let's just use, as a money example, let's use website copywriting, since that's one I'm highly familiar with, because I see people trying to avoid getting help by taking shortcuts. They want to do it themselves. They get ChatGPT to do it, and bada bing, bada boom, it's free. I didn't have to pay for it. Well, let me just tell you, dear listener, you can have the most beautifully designed website. And if the words on it miss the mark in communicating to your ideal customer, or if they were written by ChatGPT and not really showing you, chances are it's not going to stand out as you, and it's not going to bring in the people that you most want to bring in to work with in your business. And so in the long run, it can actually end up detracting from your know, like, and trust, and it can cost you clients, it can cost you money. Never mind the fact that you have to backtrack and hire somebody potentially after it's all designed, which, trust me, that is way harder. It's so much easier when a web designer and a copywriter work together from the get-go. And my colleague, Jenny Belanger, and I actually wrote a blog on that, so I'm going to include that in the show notes. But there's a variety of other things I can think of. Not asking for help can cost us money. But furthermore, let's just go beyond the money, okay? Not asking for help can also lead to burnout, like overworking. How many times has that led to you just being absolutely physically and mentally exhausted? And then imagine that pattern repeating and repeating and repeating. So it can lead to burnout not to ask for help. It can cause stunted growth. So your business might actually not get to the place that you want it to because you're not willing to ask for help. It can obviously decrease your productivity because you're spending all this time on things that are outside your expertise, and it's kind of inefficient if you think about it. And the quality of what you're doing is just not that of a professional in many cases. So trying to do everything, be the Jack or Jill of all trades, it can result in kind of subpar outcomes. And then lastly, I think that when we don't ask for help, We miss out on opportunities because when we are so mired in these day-to-day tasks or we're overwhelmed with everything on our plate and doing all the things, it can lead to missing opportunities. It can actually even lead to missing relationships that you might build with the people that you ask for help, right? So here's my thoughts on it. And I speak to myself just as much as I share this with you. We can go ahead and make wrong decisions. We can go ahead and fumble around. We can take the long road. And sometimes we do that. And sometimes I think we have to do that. We have to kind of get it out of our system. And we can also ask for help from those who know what they're doing and who have been there before, who can truly be a guide and resource for us. And that's what I want to get into next, because some of our issues around asking for help is like, I don't want help from the wrong person, right? So let's kind of walk through 5 sort of, I'm going to call them best practices when looking for help. I think number 1 is identify what you actually need. So a lot of times people come to me and they'll say, this is what's wrong. I don't know what I need. It's a common problem. Sometimes I don't know what I need either. I'm like, I don't know. I think a hug, but I'm just not sure. So fortunately, I'm a very honest person. I'm not going to sell somebody something that they don't need. And I help them kind of figure out like, is what you need something I can help with? And if not, can I send you along to somebody that I know, that I trust, who can actually do this a little bit very much better than me? Somebody recently reached out to me and she asked me for help with like a certain piece of her marketing materials. And I was like, you know what? That's not probably the best job for me. I'm going to refer you to 2 other people who I really, really admire and trust, and you will be in great hands with them. This is their wheelhouse. Bada bing, bada boom. She actually came to me because she didn't know what she needed. She's like, well, maybe I need Emily. I think Emily did this for me, so maybe she does this too. So that's my first one. Identify areas of need. And by doing that, you can like actually, sometimes it's like listing out the task that you're like, okay, these are the actual tasks I need. They drain my time, they drain my energy, they're outside of my expertise. So figuring out the areas of need, reaching out to people in those areas. And if you need them to, if they can help you condense them into what you actually need or who you actually need, that's going to be ideal. If you don't know, please come to me because I will steer you right. And I will not try to offer you anything you do not need. So my second one is to research and make sure that the help you're asking for is valid, right? Okay, so recently I saw in a Facebook group where this woman asked for marketing help. Someone promised her something and they just never completed what she asked them for. And so I think, there's no way to completely avoid this. It does happen. It's really sad. And I hate seeing it in the entrepreneurial space or any space really, but it does help, I think, sometimes to reach out to a connector, like somebody in your circle who, as a connector, they can help you ensure that you're getting somebody who has gotten a rave review. Maybe they even have worked with them personally. I want to, when I bring on somebody for help, I want to have at least like met them or see the rapport on their website or heard great things about them. I want to kind of like trust that this is legit, and I will ask them a lot of questions up front, which I've learned the hard way to do because I have been left high and dry on a variety of different things because I did not ask questions up front. So my best advice on that is like just look for people or professionals with proven track records. One way to do that is to look at their testimonials, to look at their portfolio, to check their Google reviews, right? Or maybe you even get on a call with them. You ask them questions, you check their references, conduct interviews, things like that. But if you can, get a referral from somebody you know who's already worked with them, who can speak to the quality of their work. Okay, number 3 is to, if you need to, start small. And I love when people do like a design by your side, or in my business, I have like something with like, you could do a template, or you could do one of my smaller services. And then eventually, if you wanted to, you could do like full service, custom copywriting if you're ready. So I like that because you can start with smaller items. You can start by asking for help with small things, even with a virtual assistant. Like I've seen people where they start with just a few tasks, and then over time, they kind of start delegating more and more and more. And as they assess capabilities and genius zones and build trust with that person and rapport with that person, they eventually feel more comfortable delegating more. And I don't think that that's bad. I think starting slow, if you need to, is totally a-okay. Number 4, this is really important, and one I wish I had known, say 10 years ago, but that is just to set really clear expectations. Like when you are asking for help, be as clear as you can in communicating your needs, your goals, the situation. If you have deadlines, make sure to express those clearly. In general, more communication, the better. Communication is key, and setting expectations upfront on both sides is really, really key because you want to know about their process too, which brings me to number 5. And that's just like, you are allowed to ask as many questions as you want about somebody else's process or about somebody else's way of working. Any questions really I think you need to feel comfortable. And if I get into this and I find myself asking a whole bunch of questions because maybe I'm unsure about whether or not I want to work with somebody, I will just blatantly tell them, like, I'm so sorry that I ask so many questions. I've just been burned in XYZ area, and I think that's okay. And I think expressing that helps you to both kind of like be on the same page where they don't think you're just asking questions to be distrusting. Okay. Distrusting. So, okay. Lastly, I want to say for those of us who are concerned about financial things, which if you run a business, it's not that you need to be concerned, but you should be considering money since that's what we're going for, is to make money. Not all resources, not all help costs money. And I'm going to put a bunch of these in the show notes for you. These are free resources. And I can tell you right now that these kind of resources were fundamental for me when I first started my business. I would use so many of the free resources right at my fingertips. So some are like organizations. So like the SBDC, we have an SBDC here in New Hampshire. It's the Small Business Development Center. They've been extremely helpful for me over the years, and they offer free mentoring. So you can actually get a business mentor in the area that you need help through the SBDC, and they'll be right alongside you every step of the way, from selling your business to marketing. The Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship, that's located in Keene, New Hampshire, although I don't think you have to be local to use some of their free coaching services. SCORE is another one that's pretty universal across the United States. And again, they offer free mentoring, free workshops, all kinds of free education, which I forgot to mention both the Hannah Grimes and SBDC do as well. The other thing, little known one, is this podcast or other podcasts like it that are related to business, related to marketing, related to whatever you need. There's a podcast for that. There is a podcast for everything. So you can just literally use your podcast player as a search engine sometimes. And I've even gone so far as typing in the exact question that I've had into my podcast player, and bada bing, bada boom, there's a podcast for it. So use those because that is there for you, The other one is like forming a group of friends or colleagues or peers who are just willing to offer you, here's my experience, here's my advice, here are my thoughts, right? I do this a lot with certain folks, and it's good because it's a win-win-win. We all kind of have this agreement where this is how we sort of work, and no question is off the table, even if it is in one of our areas of expertise. So those friends, they are extremely rare and precious and valuable to when you're growing your business, and friendships usually don't cost you a dime, hopefully. The last one, it's not exactly free, but it's very low cost, and that is books. And that's another one I absolutely love and swear by. I swear I learned everything I know from reading books and listening to podcasts and watching documentaries. So rely on books as much as you need to, as much as you can. I would say don't take every single word in every single book and try to adapt them all to your business, because they're written for a mass number of people, as our podcasts, and not specifically for you. That's where if you need real specific help, you're going to want to get in on one of those other kinds of resources. Okay, these are just friendly little reminders for all of us as we get out there and ask for more help. It is not putting somebody else out when you ask for help. First of all, they have a choice. They can say yay or they can say nay. So you're not putting them out by asking for them for help. Secondly, most people that you're going to be asking, they really care about you and they will be wanting to help you. Sometimes they didn't even know you needed help or how you needed them to help you. And so you actually have to be really clear, like, this is what I need right now from you. And I don't think that's putting somebody out, because again, they can say yes, they can say no. Okay, this one I learned, this is like the hugest lesson for me. You don't have to take help from anyone and everyone. Just because it's free, you don't have to say yes to it. Sometimes it's not warranted. It's not wanted. Sometimes it's actually ends up being more harmful than helpful. And it is okay to not accept help from people, to not allow those things in. Like, oh, I'm not interested right now, or I found something else. Thank you. Those are really magical words, and words that I am leaning into and learning right alongside you. Next, when you do finally choose the way that you're going to ask for help, the person you're going to ask for help from, make sure that it is somebody you trust, respect, and like. And maybe it's even somebody who you admire their skill set, or they have what you want to be building, or you definitely want to make sure that they have your best interest at heart and are not offering help in a self-serving way. There's help, and then there's, oh, like, you'll owe me for this later, right? And there's help in, well, I didn't actually even want that in the first place. So we want genuine help from people who reflect something that we kind of similarly want to build or have the skill set that we need. Lastly, you would be surprised at how many people want to help. People love helping. They love pouring into you and giving to you. And yes, sometimes it costs money, but I want you to consider that when people are helping, it's often in an area where they've built a skill or expertise for years and years and years and years. And yes, it might only take them 10 minutes to help you. It might only take them 10 minutes to explain it to you, but it took them 10 plus years to be able to do that. So think of that next time you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to pay somebody. They deserve to be compensated. And don't try to, just be as you, just act as though you would want to be treated if you were the one helping. Okay, lastly, I wanted to share an episode, actually, of the School of Self-Image podcast. This is a podcast by Tanya Lee. And she recently did one, episode number 399, which is called The Audacity to Ask. And I will include the link to that in the show notes. I thought it was really great because she really talks you through, like, when you ask for what you want and need, you then have more to give to others and are able to give more freely when they ask. So she reminds us just, we all get by with a little help from our friends, and it's kind of like an asking circle. It's like a beautiful circle of life. So I just really loved that episode, and I thought if you need more support in this area, it would be a good one for you to check out. So I'll make sure that's in the show notes, as well as all the resources I mentioned. And I would just encourage you to take a few minutes and reflect on anything that you are needing to ask for help right now on, and also maybe what kind of obstacles are in your way of asking for help. And then identify what step you need to take in order to maybe take that first action towards either delegating or getting help making a decision, or getting an area of expertise in your business that you don't have. Let me know what's going on over there. Text or leave a voicemail at the link in the show notes, shoot me an email, etc., etc. Speaking of help, next week we're going to get into collaborations, and I'm going to talk a little bit differently than I usually do about collaborations, and I can't wait to share it all with you. So I will chat with you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.